you for joining us on Future TV. I'm Linda Tamim, and these are today's top stories. Civil servants and teachers hold a nationwide strike and a protest in Beirut, urging lawmakers once again to approve the new wage scale. Israel approves 14,000 new homes on occupied Palestinian land during 9 months of U.S. brokered talks. And U.S. President Barack Obama hails a new military pact signed with the Philippines, saying it will bolster increased maritime security. Civil servants and teachers have upped their pressure on lawmakers as they held a nationwide strike and a protest in Beirut to demand the approval of the new wage scale. Public schools and the majority of private schools were shut to abide by the call of the Syndicate Coordination Committee to hold a strike. Government offices across the country were also closed. Protesters marched from the central bank in Beirut's Hamra thoroughfare to Riyadh Solh Square in the city center near the parliament. The head of the Private School Teachers Association, Nami Mahfouz, described today's protest as a democratic wedding. He said after arriving at Riyadh Solh that the rulers proved they are on good terms with the economic committees, which are linked with corruption. In another speech, head of Public Secondary School Education Teachers Association, Hanna Gharib, accused the authorities of seeking to divide public sector employees. Prime Minister Tamam Salam has highlighted the need to hold the presidential elections on time, stressing that a vacuum in that post is a hateful option. His comments came in a meeting with a delegation from the governing body of the Press Club. Salam concluded saying that he plans to tour some Arab countries in a bid to gain more support for Lebanon and to promote brethren Arabs to visit the nation. Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi has defended the UN-backed Special Tribunal for Lebanon that recently issued summons for 2 Lebanese journalists and said newspersons must do their duty under the law. Rifi says that while freedom of expression is protected by the Lebanese constitution, journalists under Lebanese law are prohibited from breaching the confidentiality of the judicial investigation and publishing of witnesses' name, as it could generate a negative impact on the course of justice. Rifi reaffirms Lebanon's commitment to cooperate with the STL. This comes after the STL court accused editors from Al Akhbar newspaper and Al Jadid television of obstructing justice and contempt last week after the 2 outlets published a list of alleged STL witnesses. The Internal Security Forces says it has seized boxes of sweets containing drugs ready to be smuggled abroad. Judicial police has reportedly raided a house in the area of Minie in the north after receiving information about a drug smuggling operation. The ISF identified the 31-year-old owner of the house, saying he was seeking to smuggle cocaine and ephedrine in 6 boxes of sweets. The police unit arrested him after he tried to escape. Four new candidates have submitted applications to run for Syria's presidency in elections that are expected to return President Bashar al-Assad to power next month. Meanwhile, fighting is still raging on the ground. More in this report.
A car bomb kills 36 people in a predominantly Alawite district of the city of Homs. An official says the bombing also wounded 85. Elsewhere in Syria, shelling persists in the center of Damascus, this time hitting an educational institute in a barrage that killed at least 14 people and wounded 86. The Sana news agency reported the incident in the Shahour neighborhood of Damascus that was targeted with 4 mortar shells, adding that 2 more hit the Badruddin al-Hussein Institute. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says the death toll could rise as some of the injured are in critical condition. Observatory Director Rami Abdurrahman says that the institute is reportedly an Islamic law center where students as young as 14 are taught religious jurisprudence, but it is not immediately clear if there were children among the dead or wounded. Shahour is a mainly Shiite district in the old city of Damascus, which has been hit by rebel fire frequently. As the fighting is still raging in the country, preparations for the elections are underway. 4 new candidates have submitted applications to run for Syria's presidency in elections that are expected to return President Bashar al-Assad to power next month, despite calls for him to step aside and allow a political solution. Parliamentary Speaker Mohammed Al-Laham announced the names of the 4 candidates, among them 2 women and a Christian, bringing the number of candidates to 11 for the June 3 election. The 4 new hopefuls are Ali Wannous, Azza Mohammed Al-Halla, Talia Salah Nasser and Sami Mikhail Musa. Like most of the candidates so far announced, they are relative unknowns. Syria's constitution requires that candidates for the presidency be Muslim, but a source in the Constitutional Court confirmed that Musa is Christian. Laham has said that on May 6, it will be announced if all the candidates meet conditions to run. Supporters of Assad took to the streets of Damascus to celebrate, following news that he will seek re-election. Dozens of supporters celebrated in the Miza district of the capital, waving Syrian flags and chanting with demonstrators. Khadija Hashmi, one of the supporters, said that they cannot look to the future of Syria without President Bashar al-Assad. Elsewhere in the capital, one man attaches pictures of Assad to cars decorated with the Syrian flag. Syria's Electoral Commission has said that those who left the country illegally will not be allowed to vote. This decision is likely to affect many refugees who crossed through rebel-held border posts into neighboring countries or were smuggled out of Syria.
And coming up next, the UN warns of a huge violations against civilians in South Sudan. That and more after the break. Welcome back. Israel has promoted plans or approved tenders for nearly 14,000 new settler homes on occupied Palestinian land during the 9 months of peace talks. An Israeli monitor group says the scale of the plans for East Jerusalem and the occupied West Bank was unprecedented, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government approving the equivalent of about 50 new homes a day, or about 1,500 a month. Palestinians had wanted a complete settlement freeze as a fundamental condition of resuming talks. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected the notion that settlement building ran counter to peace efforts. On another note, Israeli forces have demolished several structures, including a mosque in a Palestinian village. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Navi Pillay has warned of huge violations against civilians in South Sudan as she led a team visiting the country's capital of Juba. Pillay was accompanied by Adama Dieng, the UN Special Advisor for the Prevention of Genocide, and has met with Barnaba Marial Benjamin, South Sudan's foreign minister, to discuss the crisis. The visit comes after the UN Security Council expressed horror at a recent massacre of several hundred civilians in the city of Bentiu, which it blamed on rebel fighters. On Monday, international mediators called on South Sudan's rebel leader to meet with his rival, President Salva Kiir, to prevent a conflict fueled by ethnicity turning into genocide. Hundreds of activists have gathered near the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines' capital of Manila, protesting a new defense agreement which they say underscores unequal relations between the Philippines and the United States. Scuffles erupted between police and protesters, who were stopped from approaching the embassy compound by a water cannon. U.S. President Barack Obama, who wrapped up his 2-day visit in Manila, hailed the signing of the 10-year military pact with the Philippines that opens the way for U.S. troops, planes and warships to have greater access to bases in the country. Obama told a gathering of American and Filipino forces that the new security pact will give a major boost to the Philippines' security, reiterating what he listed as advantages of the new agreement.
Yesterday, President Aquino and I agreed to begin a new chapter in our alliance, and under our new agreement, American forces can begin rotating through Filipino airfields and ports. We'll train and exercise together more to bring our militaries even closer and to support your efforts to strengthen your armed forces. We'll improve our ability to respond even faster to disasters like Yolanda. And today I thank the people of the Philippines for welcoming our service members as your friends and partners. Deepening our alliance is part of our broader vision for the Asia-Pacific. We believe that nations and peoples have the right to live in security and peace, and to have their sovereignty and territorial integrity respected. We believe that international law must be upheld, that freedom of navigation must be preserved, and commerce must not be impeded. We believe that disputes must be resolved peacefully and not by intimidation or force.
South Korea's president has apologized for her government's failure to prevent a ferry disaster that left up to 300 people dead or missing, and for the inadequate emergency response. Park Geun-hye's apology and the earlier resignation of her prime minister comes amid rising indignation over claims by the victims' relatives that the government did not do enough to rescue or protect their loved ones. Yemeni forces have launched an operation to drive al-Qaeda fighters out of southern towns, where air raids have killed nearly 60 fighters in recent days. Army troops backed by local militia members had moved in to purge the towns of Ahwar al-Mahfad in Abyan province and Azan al-Huta, al-Rawda and al-Sa'id in Shabwa province. 52 days have passed since the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines flight MH370, and the mystery still remains. Australia calls off its visual search for the plane because it says any kind of debris are not likely to be found in the Indian Ocean.
Almost 2 months have passed since the Malaysian flight MH370 has vanished, where not a single piece of confirmed debris has been recovered by a massive multinational hunt that began after the plane disappeared on the 8th of March, with 239 people on board. Australia bids farewell to international military personnel as visual search for the missing Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 is called off. Hundreds of military officers from 7 countries involved in trying to find the missing Malaysian Airlines plane gathered to mark the end of the aerial search mission. Mark Binskin, Vice Chief of the Australian Defence Force, kicked off the ceremony.
From experience, I know what it takes to bring this type of air operation together and to importantly, conduct safe operations. And you should be all commended from every nation that participated for that. Operations like this are not easy. Operating at maximum range, often in poor weather, low level, stressful and challenging environment, sometimes dangerous, often frustrating.
A minute's silence was held at the Royal Australia Air Force Base in Pearce for the passengers and crew on board flight MH370. The aerial mission was called off on Monday, and instead the underwater hunt will be expanded to include a vast swathe of ocean floor that may take at least 8 months to thoroughly search. This comes after Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott said on Monday that the hunt for missing flight MH370 entered a new phase that will include seabed searches in a larger area.
It is now 52 days since Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 disappeared, and I'm here to inform you that the search will be entering a new phase.
Malaysians are taken by surprise by Australia's announcement that the visual search for MH370 would stop air and surface searches for the missing Malaysia Airlines plane, as objects were not likely to be in the sea found after more than 2 months. The people of Malaysia had little hope of missing flight MH370 being found despite US President Barack Obama's commitment to providing more help to find the plane which disappeared from radars on March 8. Obama, who was visiting Malaysia over the weekend, said the United States was fully committed to providing more assets to assist in the search for the missing plane in the southern Indian Ocean. The search effort for Malaysia Airlines flight MH370, which vanished en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing on the 8th of March with 239 people on board, has so far failed to turn up any trace of wreckage from the plane. Australia and Malaysia are under pressure to bring closure to the grieving families of those on board MH370 by finding wreckage to solve the biggest mystery in the history of aviation.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Civil servants and teachers hold a nationwide strike and a protest in Beirut, urging lawmakers once again to approve the new wage scale. Israel approves 14,000 new homes on occupied Palestinian land during 9 months of U.S.-brokered talks. And finally, U.S. President Barack Obama hails a new military pact signed with the Philippines, saying it will bolster increased maritime security. That's it from me and the news team here at Future Television. Catch us again tomorrow, same time, for more of the world's top stories.